apologies if the hair is whack. I have been fighting with humidity and I think I'm losing. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mildly Gothic. If you're new here, what I like to do is a variety of artsy things, often with a little bit of a gothic or dark twist to them. However, again, as I've been with my last couple ones, that's not quite the case today. Today I'm going to be doing the final wrap-up of everything that I have not yet shown for my Mandalorian Armorer Cosplay. If you're new here and have no idea how you got here or what I'm talking about, I have an entire playlist that I've been, putting together as I go through of how I've been creating my Armorer cosplay. Now, this may seem a little out of order if you've seen the other videos because I've already posted my full Comic-Con, or full convention review of how the costume went, the reaction, my thoughts, and kind of changes I want to make moving forwards. I wanted to get that posted as quickly as I could after the event so I didn't forget my experience, and so also if anyone that was watching connected with me from the con, there was that tie in there as well. So now we're going to be finishing up the creation and we have a lot to get through. So as far as everything that we still have to show, we have the boot covers, we have the belt, we have her tools, her helmet, and then the undershirt and pants. That is a lot of things because there's a variety of things that went into making each of these. I'm going to do my best to split this up into different sections, so, we'll see how that goes. A lot of this footage is kind of incomplete or missing because as I was getting closer to the convention time, I was just really trying to get things done, so I kind of started being worse about filming them. Hopefully this addresses some of the questions I've received. I know I've gotten at least 2 questions on how I did the undershirt and the pants. That's included in this one, so stick around. If you have any comments, questions, or things you want to see me do next, feel free to leave them in the comments down below. I love interacting with the comments, so leave me a comment and I'll do my best to respond and engage with you. If there are any questions on how I put this thing together that I did not address or get to, please ask me and I will answer them for you. I'm not trying to hide how I did anything. I'm just a little forgetful. So many apologies if I don't answer all of your questions, but let me know and I will do my best to get to them. If there's enough, I might make another kind of like follow-up on everything, but I do think this is going to be the end of the Armorer cosplay. I've got a lot of fun projects coming that are going to go back to kind of my normal artsy chaos, so if that's not what you're here for, I'm sorry. More cosplay content will come eventually. It'll just be interspersed with everything else I do because I do way too many craft things for one person. So if you want to see the artsy chaos that I do, if you've gotten to this point in the video already through all of my rambles, you might as well hit the subscribe button. I appreciate it very much. Happy to have you here. We've been growing slowly, and I'm so excited to have so many new people, stopping by in my lovely little corner of the internet. So welcome. Hi. I'm talking with my hands a lot today. Yay. With all of that said, thank you so much for getting to this point in the video. Again, I'm going to do my best to try to break this up into sections, so I will try to leave timestamps down in the description, if not actually break the video into sections using YouTube's feature. We'll see, but it will be outlined and broken up into those sections. So with all of that said, because I can't stop rambling, thank you so much for watching and let's get into it.
For all of this, there is a lot that is just me painting, and I will use this as a time to explain. I have chosen to exclude the construction of the actual boot covers because I first attempted to make them with clay and they did not come out well, and they ended up not being what I chose for the final product. I instead made them out of foam, but I did not record that process, but it was just patterning and piecing it out, very similar to how I did the chest armor. So if you want to see how I approached foam construction in general, that video goes over it a little bit. The piece that I'm currently working on is the red strap that goes around the outside of the boot cover. I decided to do this as a separate component to try to make things easier, and also I thought it would just look better overall. So I hemmed the 2 edges, and then instead of deciding to actually make pleats all the way down the center, which it does kind of appear the actual costume is pleats for these vertical lines, I decided to just paint them onto the leather rather than seaming them or making them actual pleats because I thought it was going to be quicker and more consistent and not make me want to bang my head against a wall. And there was already enough of that in this project, so I just wanted to try to get something that looked good enough because it was such a small piece of the costume that I didn't really think in the end it was going to matter. All that's left to do for this part is to hem those up and add the Velcro. So the only thing you've missed out on is me cutting a large square out of the leather about the approximate height, and I am now hemming the top of it, and I'll show you the process for how I tried to figure out the shape of it. coming right up.
Okay, so mocking this up is kind of interesting. These are the shoes that I'm going to wear, and this isn't finished yet, but there's how the toe cap is going to sit on that. I think that looks pretty decent. And so I hemmed the top of this, and I've kind of placed pins out. Pins are sharp. These are the pants that I'm going to wear because they're men's. I can get them nice and baggy. I'm going to put the detail in on the side. But, so if we wrap this, as I kick the toe cap off, you know, I'm just trying to ignore my my colorful socks. So the pins or markers are basically where I want this to sit. And I've gotten it to a point where I'm trying to get it so it has a baggy but still like decent look to it. Because the baggy really is only there, and then there's so many pieces to this. And then this will wrap around the center, and I'll take care of any other extra baggy. But this geometry is what I'm struggling with a lot. The top is easy. It's a calf and it tapers.
Getting this thing sorted to the shape of my leg was honestly trial and error, and a lot of getting stabbed with pins. I think I ended up figuring out a pretty good shape, but I think I've also could have done it better if I had gone with the foam toe caps from the start instead of the clay one you see me working with here.
I probably could have looked up patterns for this online, but I was like, how hard can making boot covers myself be? Well, I think I have the back angle that I can cut, and then I just have to deal with the front geometry of that. So, is this up high enough? I think so.
Now that I've decided on a back angle, all that's left to do for this part is to hem those up and add the Velcro.
So I accidentally cut the second pattern piece based on the original a little too small, but I also forgot to repattern it before I glued the clay to the leather, which, by the way, is actually stuck quite well. But now I also have a dog on my leather, so... Domino, what are we doing? Hi. I did not expect you to get up so dramatically, but yes, so I am attempting to repattern it. Oh, now he's sitting on my leather. Hi, baby. You are so cute. So, he's helping. But we are going to figure this out. I am extrapolating the pencil marks because I gotta figure out how that front part wraps when I didn't draw it out before I glued it. So, yeah, to finish your pattern before you permanently secure it to something that you can't remove it from. Just words to live by.
So I also included a piece of elastic underneath the boot cover and toe cap so that it would stay on the shoe and not bounce around when I was walking. I was able to attach the first part of this with the sewing machine. The second part I did attach by hand, however, because there was no way to get that geometry onto the sewing machine. So this is another thing that I should have done before I glued the toe cap in, which ended up not mattering because I ripped it out. Probably could have re-sewn it by hand, but it wasn't that big of a deal. So here's me painting the boot covers for the first time. These got repainted like 4 times, so the final color you see here is not the one that I ended up with. I had a very hard time matching the color. In hindsight, I should have waited to paint these until I painted the belt because I ended up liking that paint job, which is what I tried to match them to in the end. It all came together, but yeah, I painted them multiple times.
Since I don't have a video on how I put these foam ones together, I thought I'd do a little close-up kind of review of them. So you can see all of the seaming and stuff in there. It's made out of the same EVA foam that I made the armor. If you haven't seen the review yet, I am not happy with this color. It looks fine, in my opinion, as I'm holding it, but in conjunction with the colors of the rest of the costume, this is way too bright of a red. But I'm really happy with the clean lines and how some of this looks. I think there's some pretty decent weathering going on. The base color is just way too bright. So you can see as far as how it was constructed, there's one main centerpiece and then the sides are a series of smaller pieces kind of put together. There's a big rim around the outside to make that all look nice and smooth. And then there's these little details on top. And it is just attached with hot glue to the leather in there. You can see the sewn on elastic. Let's play a game. Which side was done with a sewing machine and which side was done by hand? You'd never know. But yeah, so this is what they look like up close. I just thought, since I wasn't able to actually get footage of putting it together, that a more up close kind of inspection of them was warranted. This section is very short and sweet. I went to thrift stores and secondhand stores to find my pants because I didn't want to spend a lot of money, and they don't need to be perfect. So these are some secondhand men's baggy pants that I found. They're a lightweight, I've called them sweatpants before, they're not sweatpants. They're a lightweight kind of cargo pant material, and they already had this really nice seam running down the side, and so I just used those two seam lines as my guideline and painted a maroon all the way down the leg. Other than that, there were no modifications made to the pants whatsoever, but I spent my time trying to find a pair with the right color and also with the right weight and look to them. I went for a men's pant because I needed them to be baggy, and most women's cargo pants for some reason are very form-fitting, which was not what I wanted, but in the end, secondhand stores had my back, and I was able to find a pair that I think worked quite well. First things first, I started with painting the pieces that I needed for the belt, and I decided to do that by starting with the gray pieces that I needed for the top and bottom sections of the belt. And after that, it was as simple as sewing them onto the edges and trying to get that hem to be as close to the edge of the brown as I could. Again, I arrive at a point in this project where I have no concept of continuity because I decided to paint the center part of the belt after I'd already sewn on the gray, but I think it was fine, and it did kind of help me get a good balance of the color. I think I went with just a darker brown because I did not want the belt to be the same color as the apron. That was the biggest thing that I wanted to avoid. So, belt update. So, this is what we've got. I've got the gray pieces all sewed onto the mane, and I've got the two center details attached. I've also got the gray back piece sewn, so this is what's going to go on the ends of the belt on the back side to kind of help stitch it together. My thought process so far is how I'm going to connect them is I'm going to basically hem this. I'm going to put hook and eyes on either end, so the belt itself will actually be one set size, and then this will have, there will be Velcro on the inside of these, and so this will actually wrap around to make a really nice seamless finish. I also have a bunch of other just like random strips that I've painted the same color as this belt, this center part, so that I can do all of the center detailing and stuff. So we're going to have the loops for her tools, and then we'll also have the miscellaneous like pouches and such. Not sure how I'm going to do those quite yet, but as far as progress, this was actually easier than I anticipated. I know those are going to be a little bit of a nightmare, but I think we're making really good progress. And I'm also really pleased with how painting it gray came out. I think it still looks like leather, but it's gray. So as you can see, we've been doing a lot of painting, but slow and steady progress.
Who doesn't love more continuity jumps? You can see a pin in the belt, and that is marked as the center point of the belt, so that I could use it as a reference point for starting to attach some of those loops for her tools. I thought originally the belt had pouches. It doesn't. It turns out it's just a series of loops on the front of the belt for her tools and miscellaneous things. But this is me pinning and cutting the gray piece to size. I said in the previous video that I was going to use hook and eyes. That did not end up happening, but I did use the Velcro on this gray piece as the foundation to holding the belt together. So the first things that I sewed onto the belt as far as the detail loops were the ones directly on the side and the one off-centered in the front, because those were for her tools and I thought would give me a really good size reference as far as how the rest of the components on the belt should be constructed. All of these were made out of EVA foam, and I kind of did them one at a time. They don't have a lot of detail, but I tried to get enough that matched all of the reference images that I could find, and in the reference images you don't see them very well. So one, nobody was really going to be able to point out if they were that wrong, since you can't ever see them that well, and two, they are a very small detail, but I wanted to get them good enough. What's not shown is how I finished them. So they are put together using the contact cement, and once that was dry, I primed them with the Plasti Dip, just like the armor, and these were hand painted with acrylic metallic paint. before I used them to then sew the leather strips on. Each leather strip was hemmed on the edge before, the end was turned under, and I seamed the small little box to get the ends to sit where I wanted them to. Overall, I think these look great. In the future, I am probably going to try to 3D print them, but for what they were, these actually worked quite well and I think looked really good. So this part got pushed off almost to the very end for one very annoying reason. I had a very hard time matching the gray of the pants that I found, but I loved the gray of the pants that I found, and in all reference images it does appear that her shirt and pants are very, very similar, if not the same color. So I ended up I have a bunch of random t-shirts now because I was trying to color match it, but I found men's t-shirts at Michael's, and the way I wanted to do the sleeve was basically a fake long sleeve so that I wasn't going to have to wear 2 layers of shirts. So I bought 2 shirts and I cut out the center panel of one of them, basically just removing the seam from the side and cutting all the way up to the top of the sleeve so that I would get the length that I needed for the center panel. Not shown, but I then seam up the side so that I basically have 2 tubes of t-shirt material. So at this point, I was just trying to use what I had because I didn't want to buy any more material, so I was utilizing the red leather that I also used for the top of the gloves and of course the detailing on the apron and tabard. So I basically measured the circumference of the sleeve by laying it flat and folding the leather over so that I could get something that would go around the length that I needed, and then a good width so that I knew that I was going to be able to do the folding and the detail I wanted without running out of leather. So I have the glove out because I folded this in a very similar way, so that I could get the double lip of the leather, except the only catch was for this one, the direction was basically going to be flipped. This is hard to explain. I will do my best in a diagram, but I needed to get the ripple so that I could not only catch the original sleeve of the shirt, but I was going to place the long sleeve segment inside the shirt, inside out, so that when I was done with the seam, I could pull the long sleeve out and everything would be attached in one cohesive seam, because I thought that would be the simplest, easiest, and most straightforward option, which it is until you're having to manipulate 5 layers of fabric through a sewing machine and you can only see like 3 of them easily. So this was a challenge, but do I know a better way to do it? Not really, unless I'm not using leather, but I was using leather. So this, I think, was the best that I could do with the material that I had. In hindsight, this should not be leather. This should just be a dark maroon fabric, probably a similar texture to the pants, just a heavy-duty fabric, but not leather. I think the leather ended up making it look weird, but again, hindsight and an afterthought.
Okay, so no diagram, but let's see if I can't explain this a little bit better, and there's some silver paint. So, here's the main part of the sleeve. You can see we've got a hem. Hi, Rena, focus. We've got a hem on the inside, and it is zigzag. I don't know why. Don't really ask me questions. I just needed it to stay, and this is a knit material. So, there's the shirt. We're going to get to these. These are coming up next. Don't ignore those for right now. So, here's the sleeve. So, I sewed this. So, I pulled the sleeve inside, and I put this seam through my sewing machine first. So if you look on the inside, there's 2 seams. And so this seam is capturing this top layer, this full fold, and of course, both the base shirt and the long sleeve attachment from underneath. So that is capturing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers. This seam is only capturing 4 layers because I cut the edge of this red off in here so that when I folded it under, I'm just catching the outside top part, and we are just not going to focus, are we? There we go. So I decided to do both seams because I thought if I did the second seam, it gave it a more inset look, and so it got me closer to the fake undershirt that I was really going for. So that's kind of how that was structured. And then also, I just kind of hand seamed these edges together because it was really messy and wasn't sure how to get it in a sewing machine, but it's the armpit, so like, who cares? Both sides were done the same way in that regard. One side, if you'll notice, is slightly puffier than the other, and that's because the leather sticks out further in this one, and it's a lot less clean. This was a really last minute part of the costume. I was really just trying to get it done at this point, so unfortunately, I do think the undershirt suffered and isn't as good as it could be, but that just leaves more room for improvement in the future. So that's how I did the sleeve for all of you who have been asking. This piece, to get a nice up-close look at it, since I know I didn't really do a good job. So these are a bunch of individually cut out strips of the red leather, and then the only thing that's seaming them together is there's a initial seam that goes all the way around that kind of holds this webbing in place, and then on top of that I cut out a separate longer strip to serve as the trimming. So there's two seams on that. There's of course the outside hem and the one that sews it onto the fabric. I sewed this one on first. No, that's a lie. I sewed the outside hem first, and then I cut the V's and then folded it under and hemmed it as appropriate. And if you'll also notice, all of the red leather has been weathered, and that is done through rubbing alcohol and sandpaper, and then also, there we go. And then also just black leather paint to try to give it a more grimy and dirty look. As much as these aren't costume accurate, I do unfortunately love how they came out. So we'll see if I can't take anything I learned from these into the next iteration of the costume. But those were just simply sewed on to the shirt at a point where I knew they'd get hidden by the armor. So I attempted to paint the underside because the underside was originally white and that looks horrible. Not that this doesn't look horrible, but it's better than white. But not by much. So this is a very hard piece to explain, so I apologize if I haven't done the best. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments.
To finish off the undershirt, here's a quick bit of how I sewed all of those individual strips together. Now for the hammer. I did not film how I put together the hammer head, but it was all just EVA foam, primed and painted just like the others. What I did record was how I put together the handle. So I found these large these large semicircle dowels. I don't know what to call them, but these large semicircle sticks, but they were really flimsy. So what I decided to do was find some wooden rods that I could use to support the center structure. So I marked out where the rod would sit on my foam pieces and then used a box cutter to cut out a channel. I used Gorilla Glue to attach the wooden dowel to the foam. Worked with questionable success, probably could have just used hot glue. And then once both dowels were glued into one side of the foam stick, I used contact cement to basically glue the foam together along with more Gorilla Glue in the center for the wooden dowel. It held up. Are there better glue choices? Probably, but it still held up and had no problems with it, so I think everything was fine. I did prime and paint this separately from the handle and then used hot glue to attach the two together when I was done. There are things on this that were definitely rushed, like the fact of I forgot to include the fins, is what I'm going to call them. There's flares on either side of the handle when it attaches to the hammerhead, and also it's supposed to have a taper outwards taper towards a flare on the bottom of the handle, but I didn't have time for that, so we just went for a nice cylinder. So, I don't have any videos on the process of putting the helmet together, but I can tell you about the process. So it was a 3D printed file. I did find the file online through an Etsy shop, and I had a friend with a 3D printer print it out and put it together for me. We did have to do some modifications as far as how we broke it apart, and then he assembled it for me using, I believe it was Bondo, and then sanding it down a good bit. I am very lucky the base file fit me with no modifications, although in the future I do think I'll probably make some changes so that I can add things like fans or a audio system so that I can actually speak outside the helmet easier. Spray painting it was very easy. It was primed with a black, and then I found a gold color to use on top. I talked about it in the retro video, but I would like to get a richer gold color. I think that would just better serve the overall look of the helmet. But when it comes to painting, I'm really happy with the paint job that you are watching being developed in front of you. I think it came out absolutely gorgeous. The only other thing that is not included in the filming of the helmet is the visor. So I did the visor by using car window tint. It needed about 2 layers before you couldn't see into the helmet, but so that I could still see out of the helmet. 2 layers ended up being about perfect. And I just actually used contact cement for this. It surprisingly worked really well, although I wasn't super patient when I was putting it in, and so some stuff got stuck to the outside of the visor, and it ended up being a little wrinkly. So something I would really like to do again with this visor is helmet is fix the visor, because it looks so crinkled and so just not so pristine and perfect like all of the beautiful Mandalorian helmets you always see are, but that's okay. Things for next time. This, I think, was the piece de resistance of the costume. The fact that the helmet looked so good, I think, tied everything together, all the flaws and everything. So I'm really happy with this, and I will take this as the opportunity to give you my outro spiel. If you have watched to this point in the video, thank you so much. I know this was a really long one, but I didn't want to drag out the construction of this costume anymore, so I figured why not just drop a big, beefy video. So if you liked it, definitely give it a thumbs up so that the algorithm might show you more of my content. And thank you so much for stopping by, and I hope to see you in the next one.